the bootleg, Brett Coleman, who does a ton of really good NFL content. And he said something, I think, revealing about Brock Purdy. So here's what Brett Coleman said on his YouTube channel, The Film Room, about Brock Purdy that was interesting.
The more I learn about Brock, the more impressed I am with him. It was this information that we got in the offseason that he was actually rehabbing through November. He was not healthy to start the year. He wasn't even healthy halfway through the year. He wasn't done with rehab until basically Thanksgiving. And he was still playing at a really, really, really high level. And then, of course, down the home stretch in the back, 6 weeks of the season through the playoffs, he just completely took off when he was healthy. But the fact that he did all that without being healthy for most of the regular season, like, this guy's just not normal. This is not just oh man, they found a hidden gem in the 7th round, or oh man, it's Mr. Irrelevant, he's getting playing time, he's starting, look how plucky he is. This is a legitimate top, not even 12, maybe not even 10. This might be a legitimate top 8 quarterback in the league that had that impressive of a year, not even healthy. The more I learn about Brock Purdy, the more I think that this guy is for real. And in a couple years, he's going to be, probably a $58, $59 million quarterback, and he's going to earn every single penny.
So it's interesting to hear him say, you kind of think about it out loud, top 10, top 9, top 8. That video just came out, but they recorded it before Jeremy Fowler's survey of NFL people came out and had Brock 11th. But as we talked through it on this channel, on this podcast, really Goff and Dak 9 and 10, I felt like you could definitely slot Brock in ahead of those two guys, which would put him around 8 or 9. And I thought that was pretty appropriate. I thought this is interesting. It tracks with what a former quarterback told me last year. And we talked about it going into the season. We talked about it last year, which is just because you're back doesn't mean you're 100%. And we saw this in training camp last year where it was a little eye-opening. They get to camp. They go, oh, well, actually, Brock is going to take every 3rd day off. That was the schedule. Basically, this time last year, Brock was going to do 2 days on, 1 day off. And then it was a little confusing because all of a sudden he had like back-to-back days off. And you thought, was there a setback? Was something going on? I mean, we've come a long way in 12 months with what the storyline is with him. But I think to hear that comment that he was still, quote unquote, rehabbing. And I think what that means is he was not, it's not that he was still hurt necessarily, right, in September, early October. It just means he was not back to full strength, which, yeah, how could he be? As I referenced, I just alluded to, like what the former quarterback told me last year was he will not be 100% when he returns. Like true, he'll be good enough. It's not that he's feeling pain necessarily. I don't know. I mean, maybe Brock will get asked about that this week, but it's just that he will not be back to full strength. I think clearly from a mental standpoint, he handled it very well, but he didn't get to spend all his time in the offseason, or at least as much time with Kyle Shanahan talking about offense and really. And then obviously he didn't get to really build up. He was just getting back to his baseline. So the idea that he was getting back to his baseline all the way into October, and then finally was able to stop the rehab process. To Brett, this is what Brett is basically reporting, that he was able to finally stop the rehab process all the way into October is really impressive. And I'd love to hear from Brock. Is it impressive because were there throws he could not make in September? Or was it, my guess is he would say no, there were not throws he couldn't make in September last year. But it just meant that he was spending time doing stuff other than building himself up from baseline. And, I think when we think about like the Brandon Ayuk contract, the 49ers, we just don't have all the information. They would love to be able to wait. If they had it their way and it all worked out the same, of course, they'd have Brandon Ayuk just playing his 5th-year option this year. Not just because it's cheaper, but because there's just information that they're going to have 6 months from now that they don't have now. There's information about Ricky Pearsall that the 49ers will have 6 months from now that they don't have now. But most importantly, there's going to be information about Brock Purdy, more information that they don't have the full picture now. Now, I think Kyle Shanahan's pretty confident in him, right? I mean, this is a guy who's had 4 top 5 offenses in the last 8 years and 5 in the last 12. Speaking of Shanahan, he's had 4 top 5 scoring defenses in the last 5 years. He's done some of that without Brock Purdy. He's done some of that without Brandon Ayuk. Like, he's won a bunch of games without Brock Purdy, without Brandon Ayuk. But for the future of this franchise, he's got to know more than anything else if Brock Purdy's the kind of guy that you can let a number 1.5, okay, a tier 2, if tier 1 to me is 4 receivers, a tier 2 receiver, which is an excellent receiver, a top 10 receiver, can he let that guy go? And is his quarterback good enough to still elevate the team? The Chiefs lose Tyreek Hill, who's a better player than Brandon Ayuk, better player than most, better player than almost everybody else. But they have Patrick Mahomes, who's a better player than Brock, right? So we're talking about the elite of the elite. They lose one elite guy, they got another elite quarterback, they still go win a Super Bowl. Is Brock Purdy the kind of guy that can lose Brandon Ayuk and still put you in position to win a championship? Right? We may know that answer better in 6 months, even though Brandon Ayuk, will play with him this year. We'll have a better idea at the end of this year. How much better does Brock Purdy get? And how much better do you think he's going to get? I think Kyle thinks very highly of him. And, if you're in that locker room or you're in that building and you already knew this information, that Brock Purdy wasn't 100% until halfway through last season, that he was still rehabbing, then it makes you feel even better. And it should make you feel even better if you're a Niner fan or if you've got Brock on your fantasy team, or you're going to pick him in daily, or you've bet on the Niners or whatever, that they're going to get better this year. The single most important thing is we talk about like the last dance and championship windows and how much do you need Ayuk. And for people who are new, like I am pro Brandon Ayuk. I think one of the great values of Ayuk is that he's such a precise player. I've said this many times. For a quarterback that throws with anticipation the way that Brock does, right? He's throwing to a spot, so the receiver better be in that spot on time. Having a precise route runner, not a freelancer, an undisciplined route runner, a guy who's not necessarily always in the right place or who takes some plays off, it really hurts. Right? Justin Herbert gets into trouble and gets himself out of trouble because he has a rocket arm, so he can wait longer to make a throw. Brock doesn't have that arm. So Brock's got to make decisions faster, which only works if you process as quickly as Brock. But you also have to have a guy like Brandon Ayuk who's in the right place at the right time. So I think in a way, kind of like Brock has some invisible strengths that you really need to be around to be able to identify. I think Ayuk does too. They're not invisible, but they just really show themselves with a guy like Brock. They may show themselves less with a quarterback like Herbert. It may be less obvious because he could make a later decision and he just puts it right on Ayuk's chest and there it is. But I think with Ayuk, you kind of see his strength when you're throwing to somebody else, right? When you're trying to throw to Ray McLeod and he's not where Brock thought he was going to be and Brock's yelling at him and you've got a problem. So I do think it'll be interesting if you get, we're not going to get preseason games. We're not going to get many reps where Brock Purdy's throwing to people and Ayuk's not around. But I do think it'll be really interesting if Ayuk's not back by the first preseason game, the series or two that Brock runs, what does it look like? And unfortunately, it's just not a big enough sample size. And the Niners won't, the only way you get an answer to that question is if Ayuk holds out into the season, which I don't expect, or he's gone at some point. And then you're in a situation where you might see how good you had it after he leaves. But the other part of that equation is that it's incumbent on Brock Purdy to improve. Like the last dance, the last run with this group, right? That's the big storylines in the NFL this year. There's many. One is, can the Chiefs three-peat? And another is, here's this Niners team that's fallen to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl twice. This is their last shot with this group. And is their Super Bowl window closing? If you have a franchise quarterback, your Super Bowl window is open, period. And it's not like if Debo or Ayuk is gone next year, this is going to be a team without talent. They have talent. They're fine. But the whole thing hinges on Brock Purdy improving. And if Brock Purdy improves, then it gives them more flexibility. If it turns out Ricky Pearsall's a really good player then it gives them more flexibility. But it all hinges on Brock. And I think the reason to be optimistic about him goes back to how little he's actually played, how good he was immediately. The question becomes, okay, we know he's got a really high floor. To step in and play the way he played is super high floor. Does he also have a lot more ceiling? And that's why talent evaluators lean with the most extreme talent, right? The biggest arm, the strongest guys, because the most athletic guys, because you can see a ceiling. When it's mental, when a lot of it is mental, when it's like, oh no, it's processing power. That's what's off the charts. You go like, okay, well, where's the ceiling? His second shot against Steve Spagnuolo, against the pressures, will he be better? I think so. We don't know. But if you're looking for reasons to be optimistic about Brock Purdy, the fact that he wasn't 100% until halfway through the season last year and still was an MVP candidate at that point, that's pretty eye-opening information. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. So I'm really excited to watch him this year. If you told me he didn't have Ayuk, that would not be good news. But I'd be excited in a different way. Like, all right, let's see what he's got. You don't want to rush there, though. Like, the longer you can have the most talent around you, the better. And he'll get that. It'll be interesting to see this week what is said, what is done, what is, is Ricky Pearsall going full bore in practice? If with no Ayuk again, he's going to get a lot of reps. I think one of the underrated stories this week and through this whole preseason is just going to be, and I saw this at minicamp, that Debo looks good. Like, if I know this happens in the offseason, they lose a Super Bowl, some people stop consuming content, they come back around this time. So if you're one of those people, just understand that I have felt like Debo Samuel's getting a little not overlooked, but he's just not getting all the love that he should be getting. By the way, this is brought to you by CIRCA Million and the CIRCA Survivor contests, $16 million in guaranteed prizes. There's 2 contests, CIRCA Million, $6 million in guaranteed prizes. You pick 5 teams against the spread every week, and winner takes home $1 million. There's quarterly and season-long prizes. Also, the worst place competitor gets a $100,000 booby prize. You could just angle for that. Then there's CIRCA Survivor, which is $10 million guaranteed to the winner or winners if there's a tie. You pick one team straight up every week. You can't pick the same team twice. You try to go undefeated as long as you can. Last year, 4 winners split $9.2 million, which is $2.3 million each. It made it the largest legal football contest in history. Each one of these contests is $1,000 to join. You have to go to Nevada, to CIRCA Sportsbook. You go to Reno Sparks, or you go to Vegas, or you go to Henderson. You go to Nevada, you sign up there. They get you signed up through a proxy, and then you can play from anywhere. So to get more information, visit circasports.com and click on contest. So the stories this week in camp: how's Ricky Pearsall going to look? What's up with Ayuk? The overlook story is going to be that Debo looks really good. I expect another excellent season from Debo. I am in the extreme minority in that I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Debo Samuel is not on the 49ers in 2025. I think a lot of people, it's just a foregone conclusion because it's going to be cost effective. They're going to be able to get out of his contract next year. And the odds are good that he's not on the team in 2025. I don't view it as just an absolute lock that Debo's not on the team in 2012. I think there's a chance he's back next year, even if Ayuk's around. But like I said, and the reason is you see when you look at the finances, it's pretty clear that it makes sense for him not to be around next year. But in order for that to happen, Ayuk's got to be back on a big contract, and then there's other things that have to happen. Like Ricky Pearsall's got to be pretty good. Debo has to be willing. Who knows what the world looks like in a year? Maybe Debo balls out, and the Niners go, all of a sudden Debo's not a bargain, but you're getting him at a good price. McCaffrey's going to get a massive workload. McCaffrey makes Debo a little more expendable, but he's got to get through the season healthy. He's got to be healthy next offseason. There's just a lot that goes into all these things, and like saying a year from now that a pro football player is or isn't going to be on a team, I think is acting like we know we can tell the future better than we can tell the future. So I think Debo's in a good headspace about it. I think he gets it, but I also think it puts him in a position to prove something. So I think Debo's going to be really good this year. Yeah, that's what I expect. All right, that's that for this. As news happens this week, I'll still be doing this stuff. You're not going to get the practice reports from me this week, although as stuff gets reported, I'll be reacting to it, and I'll be back out at Niners practice, within a week, if that's the content that you come for. So excited to be here.